Thank you, Professor Mane. Good evening. Good evening to all the participants, attendees who are attending this session on electric and hybrid electric vehicles. I hope I am audible. Can you please confirm?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I take this opportunity also to extend my thanks to the organizers of this one-week webinar series, which is jointly organized by SAE India Northern Section and RIT. Today's topic that has been given to me is electric and hybrid electric vehicles, and the topic is a bit broad. However, the focus of this session will be on technology and design perspective, because there are business aspects or policy aspects that also needs to be covered. However, I believe that the audience mostly comprises of students from fifth semester or fifth semester onwards. These are students from vehicle sports teams, and quite a few faculty members also. I have been told that they have also joined for this session. So it's a bit mixed audience that we are having. And I will try to ensure that you will have some kind of takeaway from this session. Maybe we have got around 70 to 80 minutes, and thereafter we'll have question and answer sessions. So let me start this session. We'll take up the questions right after the delivery of the main content. This is the outline of my presentation. I will speak about motivation. There are basically three parts of this session. First part will highlight on electric vehicles. Second part will highlight on hybrid electric vehicles. And in between, we'll have one part wherein I will share with you an illustration of electric vehicle, how electric vehicle is designed, because I think that is what is the interest of the student fraternity which is attending this session. Probably the questions that they would have been in their mind is, if at all I have been part of EV design team, then what kind of design aspects, issues that I need to consider, and what kind of calculations I need to do, what kind of estimations I will require to do, what kind of design decisions that as a team member will have to make. So I guess that these would be the questions, and from this point of view, I have organized this presentation. Okay, fine. This is very important part, though most of the times we do not go for motivation. I think whatever you see on your slide, these are not new issues for you. We all of us are already experiencing these issues. Air pollution and health hazards. Unfortunately, all Asian top cities have ranked within top 10 as far as air pollution index of all over globe is concerned. And again, unfortunately, our own Delhi tops at the second position. Pune, Mumbai are not far behind. In fact, I believe out of 10, maybe around we have got more than 3-4 Indian cities which come in this category, which we shouldn't be part of rather. As all of you are aware that the fossil fuel stocks that we are utilizing, they have taken around lakhs of years to build. And it's just a matter of few years from here onwards, maybe hundreds of years, or maybe few decades. And these are not long-lasting stocks of fossil fuels that we are using. Global warming, yes, the temperature of Mother Earth is increasing, and that is what also we are witnessing. I will show you a graph, and you will gauge the severity of this problem. We have seen that recently Government of India has jumped from BS4 to BS6, skipping BS5 in between. So that's why I'm saying that there are now tighter government regulations as far as emission and safety aspects are concerned. And then the customers nowadays, customer is also educated, so he is now also asking for clean technologies. So this is something as a part of motivation. Now, when we talk of air pollutants, we know that there are some. Of course, there are many elements as far as air pollutants are concerned, but main culprits are NOx, that is nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, and hydrocarbons. And just look at this, the way they impact the human life. NOx is directly influencing respiratory systems, lungs, asthma. Carbon monoxide is affecting the nervous system of human being. Heart disease is also it's contributing towards. Particulate matters are particularly very dangerous because these are carcinogenic. there are intoxicants as well, and that's why there remains chance that the human beings may face cancer cells within the bodies. So these are very serious effects that these air pollutants pose before us. A big challenge, really. Okay, fine. This data I have taken from Annual Energy Outlook 2013, slightly old data, but the purpose here is to just let you know the severity of the problem. So there are two graphs that you see on the slide. On the left-hand side, it is a world energy consumption from 1990 to 2040, right? And look at this increase, rise, 55% increase in energy consumed, right? On the right hand side, we have got some statistics or graphs based on the statistics for world energy related carbon dioxide emissions. Again, 1992 to 2014. Of course, we are right now in 2020. So this is the estimation based on earlier data. And again, you see that especially non-OECD countries, that is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, mostly OECD countries like US and Europe, they claim that their contribution towards CO2 emissions and energy consumption is decreasing. While we, India and China, we are part of non-OECD countries. And you see here significant rise as far as this graph is concerned. So just I'm throwing these graphs in front of you so that you understand the enormity of the situation. Well, this is again something, an eye-opener. You see here again the statistics right from 1850 to 2010. Right now we are in 2020, so 2010 is not far away, you know, especially when you deal with 1850. So this is the baseline, and on the left-hand side you are getting idea about atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration, and on the right-hand side temperature difference from baseline. And you see again that 1950 onwards there is sudden jump in both, that is carbon dioxide concentration as well as temperature rise of the globe. So again, this is something quite threatening, and that's why I said that it's just an eye-opener. Okay, anyway, so I think I have given you the message that we need to be proactive as far as energy requirements are concerned, and as far as transportation sector especially is concerned, because we are till the point of time we are heavily relying on gasoline and diesel, that is conventional fuels. But now even the government of India, of course the globe is moving towards hybrid electric vehicles. Government of India have also made it very clear for automotive industry in India that they need to move towards electric and hybrid electric mobility. Of course, the target is very ambitious because the countries like UK and Germany, France, they have taken the target of 2036, 2040, the timeline, so as to meet the targets. But in India, we have taken the target as 2028, I believe, or 2030, which is not distant from this day. Hardly we have got 10 years in front of us. Okay, so these are the vehicles that we are seeing on Indian roads. Mostly these are two-wheelers, three-wheelers, cars, not commercial vehicles as such. These are some hybrid electric models that you see. I would say it's in Indian market, but all across the globe. We have got some hybrid electric models on Indian roads as well, but mostly these will be coming under micro or mild hybrids. Now, what do you mean by micro and mild hybrids? In due course of time, I will talk on that as well. Here is some representative list of Indian manufacturers. So of course, there are some conventional vehicle manufacturers like Maruti Suzuki, Tata Motors, Mahindra. So they are shifting the focus onto electric mobility. And at the same time, there are a few of them like Lohi Auto Industries or Ampere Vehicles from Coimbatore. So they have totally dedicated their business to electric mobility, especially these Ampere Vehicles. They have come up with a lot of innovative products for as far as electric mobility is concerned. Tork Motors, probably you might have heard about the Bangalore-based startup. And just like students, students have started this startup some, I guess 2 to 3 years back, and they are doing well over there, and they are producing e-bikes for Indian market. Fine. And let's start with some basic definitions. like electric vehicles, hybrid electric vehicles. Then you have got something called as PHEV, that is plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and fuel cell vehicles. So what is meant by this electric vehicle? So electric vehicle is the one which uses electric drivetrain, and as a part of electric drivetrain, you will have batteries, you will have electric motor, right? That will constitute what we call it as electric drivetrain. So batteries must be charged from an external source, and of course some energy will be recovered from regenerative braking. Hybrid electric vehicles, as the name itself implies, hybrid. So we are going to have more than one powertrain. So one is conventional powertrain, which uses engine and gearbox, and the another one is electric powertrain. So since electric powertrain we are using, that's why it is called as hybrid electric vehicle. Fine. Next category is PHV, that is plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, wherein the energy source is HC fuel, that is conventional fuel we are using. However, the beauty of it is we can use grid electricity so as to charge the battery. So that is why it has been named like plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And another one is FCV, that is fuel cell vehicle. So essentially it is an electric vehicle. However, earlier we talked about battery electric vehicle, but instead of battery, now we'll be using fuel cell as an energy storage device. And that's why it is called as fuel cell vehicles, or FCEV, that is fuel cell electric vehicle. So these are the variations that we are having as far as electric mobility is concerned. This is some basic stuff from where we need to start ahead. Okay, fine. Now that we are talking about electric drivetrain, let's first try to understand the conventional powertrain, because the main differentiator between electric vehicle and conventional vehicle is the drivetrain, right? So you see on this slide, you have got one engine, and right next to engine is clutch, the transmission, drive shaft, and through drive shaft, the power or torque will be transmitted to rear wheel. So this is our conventional drivetrain. Now you see here that in case of conventional drivetrain, along with engine, you need a transmission, you need a gearbox, and you can't do away without this transmission or gearbox. Why? We'll see that. We'll try to find the answer why gearbox is required to be used in conventional drivetrain. Wherein we'll also see that in electric vehicle, you may be using a gearbox or you may not be using gearbox. Gearbox is not mandatory as far as electric vehicles are concerned. Okay, fine. I think you get to see ICE engine characteristics here on this slide. Am I audible? I hope I'm reaching to all the participants.
You're audible, no issues, sir. Please go on.
Okay, fine. So you see the gasoline engine characteristics on left-hand side, and on the right-hand side we have got diesel engine characteristics. Basically, power and torque curves, the variation of power and torque curves with respect to speed, that is what we get to see here. And look at the nature of the torque curve. You describe it as an inverted U shape, right? If we consider the case of gasoline. For diesel also, it's similar. So we have got such a curve as far as torque is concerned, and a power curve, right? But what we need, what the kind of curve that we will need is like this. So this is called as constant power curve, because when your vehicle is traveling on the road, you would like the constant power. The power should remain constant. And this is exactly what this curve, hyperbolic curve, is exhibiting here. So you see here that as the road speed increases, the level of torque. So on the y-axis, we have got tractive effort, tractive force, or maybe interchangeably we can say it is torque, because torque when divided by radius, you will get, of course, tractive effort. And your radius is nothing but wheel radius. Wheel radius is going to be always constant. So maybe we can say tractive effort or torque. Interchangeably, we can use these terms here. So what I want to say is, as the speed, if the speed is on lower side, you are going to have a lot of tractive effort at your disposal. And when your speed increases, road speed of your vehicle increases, then as you see here, I guess you are following my cursor. So the tractive effort, the magnitude of tractive effort is decreasing, and that is what is basically the requirement of a motor vehicle. A motor vehicle, where it is running on the road, right there at the beginning, it will need heavy amount of torque, and then once it catches the speed, then the amount of torque that it will require will go on decreasing. So this is what we want, this type of curve called as constant power curve or ideal power curve, right? This is what we want, but this is what we are getting with the help of engine, right? So the idea here is to convert this torque into this variation, right? And this is something that would be made available with the help of motors. Series wound DC motor or even steam engine also provides this type of characteristic curve. But what we want basically is constant output power all across the full range of motor vehicle. And that is why we need to have suitable transmission when we use conventional engine as a part of prime mover for our motor vehicle. Okay, fine. Now moving ahead, probably you are well aware that when a motor vehicle is running on a road, it is going to experience some kind of resistance. Now there are three elements of resistance. You see here the black one, it is a A resistance. So in the expression itself, there is a V square, velocity square. So that's why this curve is not a constant, is not a line, flat line, but it is a curve which is rising with respect to speed. Then this one is your gradient resistance, the green one. The green line indicates a gradient resistance that the vehicle will meet. And right there at the bottom is blue one, and the blue one denotes rolling resistance that the vehicle will have to overcome, right? So overall, if I want to show or display the resistance curves, it will look like this, as has been shown here on the right hand side of the figure, right? So probably A stands for a flat road, B stands for a road with 5-degree gradient, C stands for a road with 10-degree gradient, and so on. Right? So what I mean to say is the vehicle, when it moves on the road, it will experience some kind of resistances that we have seen here. Now this slide is very important because it lets you know the performance characteristics of typical conventional vehicle. So on x-axis you have got car speed, that is road speed of a motor vehicle. On y-axis you have got total resistance and tractive effort in Newton. Now you see three torque curves. I hope that you are following my cursor. Right there at the top is this red one. This is the torque curve that represents the first gear. The middle one, that is the blue one, it denotes second gear, the torque curve for second gear. And this one, green one, the lowest one, this one denotes top gear. Let's assume that we have got 3-speed transmission, right? So these are torque curves that we have seen here, right? We have seen these torque curves here. So this is the torque curve that our engine is giving us, and exactly these torque curves you see here in different gears. When I put my vehicle in first gear, second gear, and third gear. So these are the torque curves that are available going to the engine. And then you see these black curves named as A, B, C, D, E. So these represents variety of roads. So maybe we'll say that this A represents QA represents flat road, B represents a road with 5-degree ascent, C stands for say road with 10% ascent, so and so on. Right? Now what is important to understand here is the point of intersection, right? The point of intersection, say for example, if I concentrate on this green curve, that is I am driving my vehicle in third gear and on flat road, the point of intersection will give me the highest speed that is possible on this road, and it comes to be, say for example, we are in between 75 to 90. Let's take it as say 82 or something like this, right? 82 kilometers per hour. But now if I move from this flat road to a road with some gradient, say 5-degree gradient, then the point of intersection right now is H. It comes down to I, right? And if I project it I project below this I, then you see that the speed has got reduced. Maybe it would be around 80 kilometers per hour or so. On. So again, if I come across a steep road, right? Instead of I, now I get the point of intersection over here at point J, wherein again the speed has come down to maybe 70 kilometers per hour, right? However, I cannot drive my vehicle putting in third gear if I want to go to this road, which has got highest gradient, maybe say 15 degree or 20 degree, right? Why? Because there is no, simply there is no intersection. So what it means for me is I cannot drive on this road by putting my vehicle in third gear. I need to shift down. I need to shift down from third to second gear. And then this is the point of intersection, let's say L. So maybe at speed of around 50 kilometers per hour, I will be able to move forward on this particular road, right? So we need to understand these performance curves so as to understand, so as to characterize the behavior from a performance point of view, right? With conventional vehicles, right? Fine. Now let's move ahead. Now you see, this is the torque curve that you see here on the left hand side, this figure that you are seeing on the slide, right? We have marked 4 points on this curve: A, point B, point C, and point D. I hope that you are following my cursor. Now, if I tell you to choose the base point, right? The base point out of these four, which point that I should target, right? On x-axis is RPM, on y-axis is torque, right? But I would prefer that I identify a certain point or certain small range of RPM wherein I would like to operate my vehicle, right? So obviously your preference will not be point A, because at point A the torque that is at disposal is very less, right? So definitely there is no doubt that you won't prefer A. But what about C? Are you going to prefer C? Because C seems to be right there at the top, right there at the top of the curve, which means at point C you are going to get the highest torque. But the problem here is that if your vehicle speed decreases, say for example, your vehicle is now moving up the gradient, right? So far it was a flat road. Now if your vehicle has moved up the gradient, if that is the case, then what will happen is, now if you are already here at point C, then you will be moving towards this descending part of this curve on this left hand side, and which means the torque that will be available with your vehicle would be lessened. And in this case, when you are driving your vehicle, you must have realized that you need to suddenly downshift your vehicle. So if you are driving in fourth gear, top gear, maybe you'll have to come down to fourth gear, right? Or if you are driving in fifth gear, you'll have to switch over to third gear and so on, maybe fourth, third, likewise, right? So that your vehicle gets stabilized, right? But here the point with the problem with point C is that even though you are having maximum torque, the problem is you don't have much torque at your disposal, right? So that's why. What about let's explore point B and point D, right? Now, as far as point D is concerned, again the situation is worse because it is not offering me the highest torque, right, at this moment. And at the same time, if the vehicle speed decreases, then again further there will be a drop in the torque, which means obviously the preferred point for me would be point B, because even though it is not offering me the highest torque, still it offers me an acceptable torque value. And at the same time, the main advantage that I get here with point B is, even though there is some reduction in the speed, still I will be in this part of, for some point of time, I will be in this part of curve, which means I will not be required to suddenly downshift my vehicle, right? So point B, what I mean to say is, point B is the point which will be preferred, right? The most preferred point in this case will be point B. Fine. So this is the logic, right? Point B is something that we want to target as far as this torque curve is concerned. Fine. So what I do is, I try to identify a point B for every torque curve. So this is the torque curve that represents first gear. This is the torque curve that represents second gear. This torque curve represents third gear, and so on. Now that I have seen, I know the significance of point B. What I do is I try to identify point B and mark it over there on every curve. So for this curve, I have obtained point B here. For the second gear curve, I have obtained point B. For third gear curve, I have obtained the point over here, and so on. And now if I could draw a curve which passes through all these B points, right? What I get is basically a curve which very much resembles constant power curve, right? So this is what I want, right? So on the next slide, I will show you. So we have seen that this is the curve that we are interested in because it is constant power. When my prime mover offers me such kind of curve, right? What it ensures is that my vehicle will be operated with constant speed. So the advantage that I get is my driver is not required to time and again downshift, right? And this is exactly what I am doing with the help of this analysis. So point B I mark, and then I draw a curve which passes through all of these points B, and this is how I get a constant curve. Now this is something that is possible because of manual transmission, 4-speed manual transmission. So the area that you see here, this is has been labeled as loss of power. This is where there is, because there are some manufacturing issues when you manufacture the gears. So exactly as per your requirement, it won't happen, right? The number of teeth or some interference, and that's why there will be some deviation between what the actual gearbox is offering and the kind of the curve that actually you want, right? Okay, fine. Now let's come to, so far we are talking about conventional drivetrain. Now let's try to concentrate on EV powertrain. So this is basically basic schematic of your EV powertrain. So EV powertrain will comprise of electric motor drive. So this is your prime mover. Then the general word that has been used here is electric energy storage, which could be battery, which could be capacitor, which could be fuel cell, right? So that's why the general word that has been used here is electric energy storage. And then the mechanical transmission that you need to use so that the mechanical power from electric motor would be transmitted to wheels. So this is the most simple schematic that we can have, which represents EV powertrain. Okay, fine. The next slide presents you the conceptual illustration of a general EV configuration. So you see here that there are 3 areas which have been highlighted. One is this, we'll start with this one, energy source subsystem, right? Which will comprise of energy source, battery maybe, energy refueling unit, that is your charging system, and then energy management unit, which is nothing but your battery management system, right? On top you see electric propulsion system, which comprises of electric motor along with its controller and mechanical transmission along with wheels. But before that, you need to have power converter as well, and then vehicle controller, right there at the top of the hierarchy. So this whole thing will comprise what we call it as electric propulsion system. And another part that has been shown here is auxiliary subsystem, which comprises of auxiliary power supply, like power steering, HVAC units, right? So as to cater to the needs of these subsystems, you need to have some kind of provision. Right. So here the variety of 3 types of links have been shown. This double lines show mechanical link. I hope that you are following my cursor, right? Then electrical link, the dark one, thick one, right? Electrical link, and this is the control link. So there needs to be communication between vehicle controller and energy management unit. Then your charging system and energy management unit, that is BMS, right? So this communication has to be facilitated. So this is about general EV configuration. Okay. Okay, fine. Now, one of the important design decision that you will have to make as far as electric vehicles are concerned is configuration, because there are a lot of variation that is available. And basically, you need to choose the appropriate configuration, keeping in mind the requirements of your vehicle that you are developing or designing, right? We have got some 6 configurations which have been shown here on this slide. Let's try to figure out the difference between A and B, right? So here, let me tell you that M stands for motor, gearbox, GB stands for gearbox, and D stands for differential, right? And on the other side, that is figure B, again the same elements you can see, M, G, GB, and D. But the important thing here is the clutch has been used here in figure A, and there is no use of clutch has been shown in figure B, which means that in this configuration, multi-speed gearbox has been used, while in figure B, since clutch has not been used, mostly it is the case of single speed transmission. So one of the important decisions that you will have to make is whether or not you are going to use gearbox in your electric powertrain. And if at all, if you are using gearbox, then whether it is going to be single speed gearbox or multi-speed gearbox. If it is going to be multi-speed gearbox, then whether it is going to have single speed or two-speed gearbox or three-speed gearbox or what. So this is a design decision that you will have to make here. If you focus your attention on figure C and D, now what you see here is motor comes along with its fixed gearing, and then this is the differential, right? While in the figure D, you see that two separate motors instead of single motor, two separate different motors have been used, and that's why differential has been removed. So in this case, we do not require the differential unit to be used. Why? Because two separate motors we are using. So there is no role to be played by differential, right? So it could be removed. This is a bit further sophistication that has been brought in this configuration as far as figure E is concerned. So now the fixed gearing has been part of your wheel hub, right? And two separate motors have been used. And going one step ahead, this is the most sophisticated configuration that you can have. You'll be using hub motors, wherein in the wheel hub itself, you'll be mounting the motors. And of course, this seems to be a very simple configuration with lot of space. So here packaging will not be a big issue because there will be ample amount of space for driver, passengers, as well as the cargo, right? So from that point of view, but of course it will be a bit costly, right? Because you are required to use hub motors here. And further, if you use 4 separate motors, then you will get a configuration called as all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, which is based from the viewpoint of stability. So that is also a possibility that you may explore here. Right? So one important design decision that you need to take about electric vehicles is configuration. What kind of configuration? Because the requirements will vary. For example, if I am designing a car, a small car, and if, of course, electric vehicle, and electric, maybe say you say light commercial vehicle, and the requirements are altogether different, and one configuration will not be suitable for all applications. So keeping this in mind, your packaging issues, right? You need to take a call on EV configurations. I hope so far we are going at decent pace. Is it okay? Can you confirm, Professor Bane?
Yes, sir.
Is it okay? Okay, fine. Fine. Well, I would say this is the most important part of your EV drivetrain. Traction motor characteristics, right? Because if you are using electric drivetrain, then just like in case of ICE engine, we have gone through the characteristic curves. For electric motor also, we need to understand the motor characteristics curves. So again, if you see here on x-axis, we have got motor speed, 1000, 2000, and so on. On left-hand side y-axis, we have got motor power expressed in terms of kilowatts. And here on the right-hand side, it is motor torque in Newton meters. Now you see that there is a very important point that has been marked here on the x-axis. It is called as base speed, right? And base speed is a speed of motor wherein what happens? Something special is happening here if you observe. So far till the base speed, there was always increment in your power. But after base speed, the power remains constant. While exactly opposite happens in case of torque. Up to the base speed point, your torque was constant, torque remains constant, and then hyperbolically it decreases like this, what has been shown in this curve. And if you concentrate your attention on this part of curve, it very much resembles what we call it as a constant power curve or ideal power curve, ideal tractive effort curve, right? This is something that we are interested in, and this should answer our first question that why gearbox may not be required to be used when you are using electric powertrain. So ultimately here itself your electric motor characteristics are such that you are getting that constant power curve. So you may not require to use gearbox at all, or maybe you will be using gearbox, but it could be only single speed gearbox will also be able to meet your requirement, right? So this part is very important. You call it as a constant power region, and larger this part, larger the breadth of this part, right? Higher will be your torque, right? The height of this left hand unit would be more, which means more torque will be at your disposal, right? There is one more important term that you see here that is called as speed ratio X, right? Now, what is that speed ratio? Speed ratio basically is a ratio of maximum speed of motor to base speed of motor. Now, here in this example, uh, say my maximum speed of motor is around 5000 RPM and the base speed, let's take it as 1500 RPM, which means 5000 divided by 1500. So as far as this particular motor is concerned, I may say that I am having speed ratio of the order of around 3.3, right? 3.3. But motor to motor, depending upon its construction, this value of X will vary, right? So you may have motor of X is equal to 2 or 4, 5, 6 or more than that, right? Now, what is the significance of this X? That is something we'll see on the next slide, because this is absolutely very important term as far as electric drivetrain is concerned. Fine. Now, this slide shows you speed torque profile of a typical 60 kilowatt motor that is being used for electric vehicle. Now you see here that again on x-axis we have got motor speed, on y-axis we have got motor torque, right, in Newton meters. And there are three cases have been shown here. First case is x is equal to 2. I'm having speed ratio of the order of 2, x is equal to 2, right? Here my base speed is 2500 RPM. Now when it shifts on the left hand side, right? When the base speed shifts to left hand side, say here in this case it may be around 1200 or 1300 RPM, then what has happened is I have got x is equal to 4, right? But at the same time, the most important thing that has happened for me is instead of slightly more than 200, so maybe we will say here 225 Newton meter were available for us when x is equal to 2, right? Now I have got a higher torque value of 450 Newton meters, right? Instead of x is equal to 4, if I choose a motor in which case x is equal to 6, I will get further improvement in my torque value, that is 700 Newton meter. So higher the torque value that is available with your vehicle or motor, higher will be its performance in terms of maybe acceleration or gradability, right? So your gradability will be definitely better if you have got higher amount of torque at your disposal. Acceleration capability of your vehicle is also a function of torque that is available with your vehicle, right? So what I learned from this is I need to choose higher X value if I want to have more amount of torque at my disposal, right? Now again, see, for example, I'm developing an electric vehicle, a sports kind of vehicle, right? A sports car or a sports bike, right? Of course, torque is something that is my major requirement, right? So in that case, maybe instead of x is equal to 2, I will prefer a motor with x is equal to 4 or maybe x is equal to 6. However, if I'm designing my application is a small car, electric vehicle, which is supposed to be used for urban applications, maybe 40 or 50 kilometers per hour of speed would be quite good enough. In that case, probably I will restrict myself to a motor with maybe x is equal to 2 or maybe maximum x is equal to 4. But in that case, I may not be going to a motor with x is equal to 6, right? So what we need to understand here is the torque value is something that is very important for us from performance point of view. There are two ways to go about it so as to ensure that we get highest torque available. One is that choose motor with higher X value. That is the function of construction of your motor. And second is you can use maybe single speed gearbox or 2-speed gearbox. So you reduce the speed and amplify the torque. So these are the two ways you can ensure that you have higher torque at your disposal, right? Now I will show you 3 figures in these 2 successive slides, this one and next one. And let's see what kind of inference we draw from these 2 figures, right? These are tractive effort and transmission requirement curves, right? So on x-axis, again, it is vehicle speed. On y-axis, we have got tractive effort, right? And now you see here that in this application, we are using 3 speeds, right? So A, B, and CF, right? That is our first gear. D, E, F, H, that is the second gear, and third gear is G, F, H, right? So we are using motor speed ratio X value is 2, and this vehicle using 3-speed gearbox, right? If I go to the next slide, right, and here two figures are there. On left hand side, we have got x is equal to 4, right? And now see what has happened here, right? X is equal to 4, but instead of 3-speed, now I can use 2-speed transmission, right? And on the right hand side figure, I see that again x value has up to 6, x is equal to 6, while instead of 3-speed or 2-speed gearbox, I am using only single-speed gearbox, right? Now, what difference I do expect from the viewpoint of performance of these three motor vehicles? If I want to answer to this question, I need to take a look at the tractive effort that is available here. See, so even though I'm using here a motor with x is equal to 2 with 3-speed transmission, the torque that is available with this vehicle is 6.5 kilonewton, in between 6, 7, let's say 6.5 kilonewton. In the second case also, right, even though I'm using x is equal to 4 motor and 2-speed transmission, I'm getting the value of around 6.5 kilonewton, the same value. And in this case also, when x is equal to highest, x is equal to 6, right, and single speed transmission, I'm having torque of the order of the tractive effort of the order of 6.5 kilonewton. So what it means is, even though we are having 3 design variations, the performance of these vehicles will be similar. There won't be difference as far as performance of these 3 vehicles are concerned, because we are getting the torque which is of the order of 6.5 kilonewton in all the cases. However, the advantage that we get here is the configuration is simple, right? The simplicity has been increased. Why? Because I am using only single speed transmission. Why? Because I have chosen a motor with higher value of x, speed ratio, right? So here I can afford to use only single speed transmission. But while in this case, the earlier one, I was using a motor with x is equal to 2, right? But so as to obtain this value of 6.7 kilonewton, only single speed transmission will not serve the purpose, and I'm required to use 3-speed transmission, right? So this is the difference. This is the significance of your what is called as speed ratio x, right? Okay, fine. So now I think we have learned the motor characteristics. We have talked about the significance of this motor speed ratio, right, and how it affects the vehicle performance. Now let's move ahead. Well, just like in case of IC engine, again you see that there is a operational area, right? There is an area as far as RPM is concerned. On x-axis we have got motor speed, on y-axis we have got motor torque. So we can identify there is a region, there is an area in between, right? Say 90%, 86, 83%. These are all efficiency values, right? So if I could run my motor within this certain zone, right? Say maybe here I will say 1000 to 2000 or maybe 2500. I'm going to get the best efficiency out of my motor. However, if I deviate from this speed range, maybe 4000 or 5000, right? The efficiency that I am obtaining from my motor will be on lower side. So this is something I will need to build in my controller. I will have to build my controller in such a way. I will need to ensure that my motor in most of the times operates in a certain speed zone, right? This is very much similar to our IC engine. Right? Fine. What kind of motor that I need to select? Of course, I'm going to have a lot of choice like DC motor, AC motors, and so on. Again, there are subtypes in DC, AC motors. But what would be the major requirements from electric vehicle perspective as far as motor is concerned? So, of course, we have seen that we need to have a motor with extended constant power region. So the breadth of this constant power region should be as high as possible. But at the same time, just like in case of engine, very important is torque to inertia ratio as well as power to weight ratio. That is very important because it is going to have influence on your acceleration capability of your vehicle. Of course, ruggedness is a requirement because your vehicle will be driven in harsh conditions. Apart from this, ease of control is one issue that we need to take care of. And then low acoustic noise, right? Low electromagnetic interference, that is EMI, right? So these are the issues that needs to be addressed. And of course, low cost and low maintenance. These are the commercial aspects that we need to take into consideration. So these are the overall requirements of motors, electric motors that we'll be using for our electric or hybrid electric vehicle application. Well, as far as motors are concerned, we have seen that we have got a lot of variety there. AC induction motors. So nowadays, basically AC induction motors are being used in most of the cases, as well as PMDC and brushless DC motors are also being used. However, the switch reluctance motors probably is going to be the future. So in the future, most likely the attention will be shifted from these motors, AC induction motors or PMDC motors, to switch reluctance motors, right? Briefly, we'll try to cover maybe one or two types of motors here. So the important advantage of this AC induction motor is that the technology is mature, and more importantly, power to weight ratio is quite good, right? So if, for comparison, Daihatsu Hijet electric car using DC electric motor, and it offers you power to weight ratio of the order of 0.37 kilowatt per kg. Now, if you compare this with the one with General Motors EV1, the power to weight ratio here offered by this AC induction motor is 1 kilowatt per kg. So that's why the AC induction motors are now being popularly used. Another option that you have is synchronous motors, but usually you need to downsize these motors because the capability of these motors to deliver power is very high, ranges from few kilowatts to several megawatts, while for electric vehicle applications, usually our requirement would be from 10 to 50 kilowatts, right? And then of course, you would be using for permanent magnets. If you are using, then you will need this rare earth magnets materials, high earth core stability magnet materials like neodymium, iron, boron. However, these are very costly materials. Unfortunately, these materials are not available in India. Worldwide also, only there are few places where these materials are available, like few of the Latin American countries like Brazil, Peru, Argentina, and China. So not widely available, and obviously these are costly materials. So ultimately the cost of your motor will also be high in this case. Another important design issue as far as hybrid electric vehicle is concerned is weight, right? So you cannot rely on a traditional material or traditional manufacturing processes. So Honda Inside Hybrid, they have used aluminum and composites materials, ABS composite materials, right? And the material reduction is of the order of around 40%. So that is a big gain as far as weight reduction is concerned, right? Ultimately, the other side is vehicle cost will rise. But very important issue not to be missed in electric vehicle design is because the electric powertrain will weigh approximately double as compared to conventional powertrain. You have got battery, mass of battery or weight of battery, motor and motor controller. So together they will weigh more as compared to conventional drivetrain, and that is why your structure needs to be heavy. It needs to be strong, and that is why you need to think from the viewpoint of reducing the weight, because if you don't reduce the weight, ultimately the performance of your vehicle will suffer. Maybe say top speed of your vehicle or acceleration capability of your vehicle or gradability of your vehicle. So all these would be affected, and from this point of view, lighter would be the better structure as far as electric and hybrid electric vehicles are concerned. As far as battery weight and volume is concerned, I will fetch your attention to this last paragraph of this slide. If you compare here, the problem with batteries is that the specific energy and energy density per liter of volume is very less. If you compare this with gasoline, look at the statistics here. I will read it out for you. Tank of gasoline has more than 40 times the useful specific energy per kg and more than 60 times the useful energy density per liter of volume, right? Which means, so as to save the same amount of power or energy, you will need battery of higher weight, higher mass, as well as it will occupy a lot of space as well. And when it occupies a lot of space, ultimately you need to figure out the packaging issue of your vehicle. And since the weight has been reduced, earlier in the earlier slide we have addressed this point that it's very important for electric and hybrid electric vehicles to work on weight reduction. So optimization studies, maybe you'll have to think of using composites, using aluminium, going for some untraditional manufacturing methods, production methods. So the variety of techniques you should be using so as to bring down the weight of your vehicle. However, cost will rise. So that is con here. Well, now coming to battery selection, obvious question would be, what are the parameters, technical parameters on the basis of which I need to make battery selection, right? And as far as battery selection is concerned, though there are lot many parameters, but there are 2 or 3 important parameters that are very, very important from the viewpoint of battery selection. One is high specific energy and another is high specific power. High specific energy means power. High specific power means power, that is watt per kg, that is how much power is could be stored within 1 kg mass of your battery, right? And power is very important from the viewpoint of vehicle performance. Typically it is going to influence your acceleration and hill climbing capability. Well, as far as specific energy is concerned, specific energy means watt hour per kg. It is going to have influence on driving range of your vehicle. So, if you tell me to choose a battery, appropriate battery, the first question that I need to find out is what is the specific power and what is the specific energy for the particular battery. And of course, again here also you have got lot many choices as far as battery technologies are concerned, from which you have to make a choice. Another important parameter is energy density, which is watt hour per meter cube, which means it has got to do with space, volume, right? So how much energy per unit volume of the battery can be stored, right? And this parameter dictates the available space on your vehicle. Another important parameter is cycle life, right? So charge discharge is 1 cycle. So how many cycles your battery can withstand? So number of cycles, the life of your battery will be expressed always in terms of number of cycles, whether these are 500 cycles, 1000 cycles, 1200 cycles, right? So this is how you are going to figure out the life of your battery. And then of course, there are some other issues as well, like longer cycle time or reasonable recharge time. So obviously I would be interested in the battery technology, which allows me to recharge the battery within least possible amount of time. And that is what is the case with our conventional vehicles. So I get my vehicle into the gas station and within 5 minutes I can get out, ensuring that the tank is totally filled, right? But that is unfortunately not the case with especially battery vehicles. It will take some time of around 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours or more, right? And slower rate will be better from the hill point of battery. So that is an issue. Of course, these are some, I would say, common parameters that would be of relevance, like low cost, safety, reliability, and low maintenance. Recyclable material, because these days there is a lot of focus on green design, and I think one of my slide addresses to this issue as well. So let me move forward. Where it is, yeah, here. So the problem here is the material that you are using, say lithium-ion batteries nowadays very popular, but the lithium in this battery and nickel-cadmium battery, the earlier popular battery was nickel-cadmium. So cadmium, lithium, these are very toxic materials. These are not good for human beings as well as animals. Again, same is the case with sodium in sodium sulfur and sodium nickel chloride of batteries. These are very unpleasant to deal with. And so obviously there are the government regulations that you need to adhere to. But of course, from designer's point of view, your thought process would be limited to the battery selection based on technical parameters. Now, apart from this, there are some other parameters of interest as well, like charging and discharging curves that you need to study. There is something called a self-discharge property of a battery, wherein even though you are not putting load to your battery, the battery will lose out some charge, right? So in case of lead acid battery, if you don't use the battery and if you fully charge the battery, You have not used it for 6 months, and then again if you go back to your battery, the battery will not be showing any charge. Why? Because it has lost all the charge over the period of time, going to this property called as self-discharge. Self-discharge rate is inherent characteristic or property with most of the batteries. Internal impedance is internal resistance. Depth of discharge. Now this is of course important, especially important for starter batteries, but for traction purpose batteries also this point will be very important. Depth of discharge means how deep you can allow the discharge to take place, right? In some cases, in some battery technologies, frequent discharges will adversely impact the battery life of battery, and that is why depth of discharge, the capability of battery to survive to deep discharges, that becomes an issue to be aware of. Cycle life, I think already we have talked about. And one more important point is temperature characteristics. If you have used your vehicle for longer period of time, then ultimately there will be a rise in temperature. And though your battery will be having a battery management system, which will take care of thermal control, but still you need to be wary of temperature characteristics of the battery under consideration. So apart from these two parameters, high specific energy, high specific power, energy density and cycle life, all remaining parameters also you should assess on a technical basis, and then you can move forward with respect to your battery selection. Is it okay so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so shall I move ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. Another important tool that is available at your disposal is called Ragon plots. Now, the idea is very simple. Ragon plots are basically plots wherein energy density is plotted against power density. So energy density in watt hour per kg and power density in watt per kg, right? So these are pitted against each other. And now you see that there are variety of choices that are available for you. Of course, battery technology is there, but apart from battery technology, there are some other alternatives that also, if you want to explore, of course, that may not be the case with your Eficycle or Baha or you know the other vehicles, but maybe a vehicle manufacturer will try to figure out instead of battery, can I use fuel cell, or can a capacitor, electric double layer capacitor could be used for instead of battery, or lithium ion capacitor could it be used. So the beauty of these Ragon plots is it helps you to make a decision which technology you should go for, because you get an idea, because the energy density is important from the viewpoint of range, right? And this one, power density is important from the viewpoint of uh, acceleration capability of your vehicle. So it will depend upon your application. Just give me a break of 1 minute. Just will be back.
Okay, so we'll take a short break here, and sir is going to change his presentation and go to or open up another presentation. In the meantime, I do see some questions which have popped up. So,
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yes, my laptop was getting discharged, and we are talking about battery discharge.
Yes.
Anyway, so what I was talking about is a lot of technologies are available, and you want to figure out which is the best technology, which would be the best option for your proposed vehicle. Say, for example, if it's sports vehicle, then probably you would be very much interested in power density. Range may not be an issue. While if it's a cargo vehicle, which has to cover maybe 300 kilometers or so in a day, range becomes an issue. And in that case, energy density becomes important, right? So you see here in case of fuel cell, uh, energy density is very good, but it is very poor as far as power density is concerned, right? So you cannot rely on fuel cell if you want acceleration or reliability, right? You need to figure out, apart from fuel cell, you need to integrate it with some other technology so that your range as well as acceleration, both characteristics will be taken care of. As against this, if you think of EDLC capacitors, they are very good as far as power density. So they will give you a burst of power, right, within shortest possible duration of time. But the problem is energy density is very less, which means you cannot rely them rely on them as far as range is concerned. So this is the one tool that is at your disposal. These Ragon plots are available, and you can refer to these Ragon plots, and you can go about deciding which type of technology you can use depending upon the requirements of proposed application. Fine. Another important aspects, design issues from the viewpoint of safety. Crash performance of your electric vehicle is something that need to be taken care of. Lead acid battery, especially, will have gassing problem. Now, what happens with lead acid battery is that due to the reaction, there will be some hydrogen and oxygen that will try to come out, try to escape out from your lead acid battery. And as you know, hydrogen is a very explosive gas. And if there is no provision of ventilation, and if some like cigar or lighter comes in contact with hydrogen, then of course it's not a safe scenario to operate in. So from this point of view, gassing problem has to be taken care of. You are dealing with very high voltage systems like 400, 500 volts, or maybe at least 200 volts. And that is why the quality of insulation, connectors, interlocks, these are absolutely important issues to be aware of. And I think SAE standards are available. Even there is a rule book for EV cycle as well as Baha and other vehicles. So you need to be aware of these requirements, and you will have to adhere to those provisions, right? When we have gone through this, of course, you need thermal protection, you need overspeed protection, especially in case of motor. If there is no load, then suddenly the speed will rise. So you need to think of such aspects like this. Temperature issue, we have talked about battery and motor temperature issues. Then it is likely that because of over voltage or short circuit, your power transistors will go off. So some kind of measure has to be taken for that. And these are some guidelines that are very much, I believe, are applicable for your EV motorsport vehicle. Maybe EV cycle, or it could be Baha vehicle or anything else. I believe. Fine. Okay, just to get an idea. So as I was saying, there are plenty of battery technologies like these lead acid, and still lead acid batteries are being used for electric vehicles. Then came nickel cadmium or nickel metal hydride batteries were in very much in use few years back, and nowadays we very much rely on lithium ion batteries, right? Now if you compare lead acid battery with lithium ion battery, see, the comparison has been made based on these parameters: specific power, energy density, then specific energy, and cycle life. So specific power, if you take a look at lead acid batteries, 35 to 300 is the range watt per kg. While in case of lithium ion, it will definitely give around 250 to 300 watt per kg. As far as energy density is concerned, lithium ion battery is very much superior as compared to lead acid battery. If you compare these figures, 5090 and 250 600. Specific energy, lead acid battery 15 to 45 watt hour per kg, lithium ion 110 to 160 watt hour per kg. Right? And again, as far as cycle life is concerned, lead acid batteries life is limited to maybe 300, maximum 600. Like, of course, these are representative values. Lithium ion battery will give you maybe around 1,000 number of cycles. So definitely lithium ion battery would be a better choice from technical point of view. But the other side is it's going to be costly in comparison to lead acid battery. So the choice is to be made by the design team. Fine. So this table has been inserted so as to get you an idea, the feel of variety of battery technologies that are available, and the specific power, specific energy, or energy density values that are being offered by these technologies. Well, a battery will always come with battery management system, and this battery management system is nothing but a control system, just like in case of engine management system, which will be responsible for cell balancing, current and voltage control, or thermal management and control. So all these issues will be addressed by this BMS. Now, cell balancing issue is basically you need to ensure that same amount of charge should remain in all the cells. So you are talking about a battery of say very high voltage capacity, 200 to 300 volts. So it is not a single unit as such. It will comprise of multiple number of cells. And the important thing to be ensured is that the same amount of charge should be there within all cells. It should not happen that some cells are overly charged and some cells have been, undercharged. So if that is the case, you will need to replace your battery, and that is why you need to have battery management system, which will ensure that every cell will have the same amount of charge within, right? There are some other design issues that you need to address when you design electric or hybrid electric vehicle. HVAC, of course, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, right? I will focus my attention on these three only: braking, suspension, and wheel subsystems. Now, regenerative brakes is something that is a defining feature of electric vehicles. You just can't use normal brakes because you are relying on battery and the battery needs to be charged. So you will have to use regenerative braking so that you ensure that your battery charge status will always be at the maximum, on the maximum side. You cannot use the same suspension because the suspension is used for certain sprung mass, especially if you are converting your conventional vehicle into electric vehicle. Then the variation in the weight has to be thought of because you design suspension for some amount of sprung mass, and the sprung mass in case of electric vehicle is definitely different as compared to your conventional vehicle. So the same vehicle but electric vehicle version, and you are not going to have same mass, and obviously your suspension properties in terms of say stiffness or damping ratio, these have to be reviewed and accordingly adjusted for better comfort. As far as wheels are concerned, you would like to use wheel hub motors in most of the cases. So you just can't go ahead with regular wheels, right? Right. And as far as tires are concerned, you would like to use rolling those tires which offer lower rolling resistance. Because if the resistance is lower, your vehicle performance will be higher. And from that point of view, you will try to use special tires which will experience a low rolling resistance. Similarly, design of controls, again, just like in case of conventional vehicles, this is an issue for electric and hybrid electric vehicles as well. And ergonomics plays a lot of role here, right? Based on anthropometric data, you need to find out appropriate locations for controls, like clutches, brakes, right? Or switches, dashboard, display, and controls, I need to say here. So this is where, again, you need to give your thought to, and then charging and refueling systems. So these are the design issues that you need to take into consideration when you think of designing an electric vehicle application. Well, battery electric vehicles are suffering from these issues, like initial cost is too high. So if I want to purchase an electric car like Kona offered by Hyundai, I guess it's around in the bracket of 24 to 25 lakhs. And the same capacity conventional vehicle will cost me two way below, right? So high initial cost is the problem with electric vehicles. Short driving range is also an issue that is the problem with electric vehicles. Recharging takes much longer time, as I think all of you are aware, and battery pack takes space and weight of the vehicle. So you need to work on packaging issues. So these are all the limitations of battery electric vehicles. But I must say that there is a lot of research that is offering as far as battery technology is concerned. And within next 2 to 3 years, the world is hopeful that the battery technology will mature. There will be a lot of improvements, and whatever the range that we are getting with the conventional vehicles. In fact, Tesla has claimed to have built a more designed a vehicle which offers you around 300 to 400 kilometers of range, which is very much comparable with conventional vehicles. Okay, so we have come to end of first part, that is electric vehicles. Now what I do is I will switch over from this PPT to design illustration. Let me open this PDF file, and we'll just go into a simple illustration of electric vehicle design. I think that file I have not been able to access from here. Okay. Anyway, let's come back to this PPT. I'm not sure, but I have not been able to access my file in this mode. Let's go ahead with this hybrid electric vehicle part of it, and then possibly I may take you to this the remaining part, that is electric vehicle design illustration. Okay, going into hybrid electric vehicles, there are two powertrains. So that's why it is called as hybrid: energy source 1, energy converter 1, and energy source 2 and energy converter 2. And the powers have been summed up, and these have been provided to load. So these solid arrows show a power flow when your vehicle is moving ahead, and these broken arrows or lines or curves, they are showing the power flow when your one of these powertrain, that is electric powertrain, is being charged. Now, out of these two powertrains, one is going to be our conventional powertrain in most of the cases, and another powertrain will be electric powertrain, and that is why it is called as a hybrid electric vehicle, not only a hybrid vehicle. Hybrid vehicle, and it could be any powertrain that you may be using, but with hybrid electric vehicle, you insist that one powertrain out of these two is going to be electric powertrain. Fine. Now, how do you classify a variety of hybrid electric vehicles? So you have got three variations or three categories are available as far as hybrid electric vehicles are concerned. One is micro, another one is mild, and another one is full, or also called a strong hybrid, hybrid electric vehicle, right? And the classification could be made based on the voltage levels or maybe the features that the vehicle is providing, right? So let's talk about voltage levels. If the voltage level is of the order of 14 to 42, somewhere around 42, 48 volts, usually it would be called as micro hybrid. While the voltage level is say 42 to 144, 150 volts, then it will be case of mild hybrid. And for strong hybrid, usually the voltage level should be more than 200. If the voltage level is more than 200, it will be called a strong hybrid or full hybrid. Another way to go about this distinction is the features. Now here you see there are four features, those have been mentioned here: engine start stop, regenerative braking, motor assist, and electric drive. Now, if you look at this conventional vehicle, it offers you only engine start stop feature. The remaining features are not available at all. If you take a look at full hybrid, all the features will be available, right? While in case of micro, engine start stop feature will be available. However, regenerative braking, motor assist feature will be available to certain extent, minimal. This is the word that has been used, minimal. And electric drive, that is pure electric drive, simply will not be possible with micro hybrids. Now with mild hybrids, of course, engine start stop is possible for all, but regenerative braking and motor assist is better as compared to micro. So the word that has been used here is modest. Modest means better than minimal, but not at the level of full hybrid. So modest. And electric drive, that is pure electric mode. Can you run this mild hybrid in pure electric mode? Yes, to a certain extent, maybe 10 to 12 kilometers, not like full hybrid, right? So this is a differentiator. And as far as full hybrid is concerned, it is in a position to offer you all the features to satisfaction, right? So most of the hybrids that are on Indian roads, either they are micro or to the max mild hybrids. Okay. Now, one of the further decision that you will have to make is what kind of architecture you will be choosing for your hybrid vehicle, because you have got four architectures possible as far as hybrid electric vehicle is concerned, a typical HEV is. First we see hybrid, right? What is IC engine here? You have got generator, you have got power converter, which itself will look as work as electric coupler. Now here, though you are using IC engine, your IC engine is not directly connected to transmission. It is not connected to road wheels, right? And you are using IC engine so as to run the generator, and generator converts mechanical energy into electrical energy. and this electrical energy will either be sent to electric motor, or it will be sent to your battery, right? So this is the idea of series. So electric coupling has occurred here. That is why it is called as electric coupling. What happens in parallel, also called as mechanical coupling, is you are using IC engine, but here you don't come across a generator. Why? Because IC engine is also through mechanical coupler connected to transmission. So your electric motor and IC engine both have been connected to transmission, which means road wheels, through a mechanical coupler. So here in the first case series, we are using electric coupler, and in the second case, that is parallel, we are using mechanical coupler. And the mechanical coupler could be anything like gear pairs you can use, or belt pulley arrangement, sprocket chain arrangement, right? All these elements you could use. Of course, one out of this, and this will be called as mechanical coupler. Another choice that you have got is series and parallel. Here the case is the thought process is, can we have both benefits of series as well as parallel together? So from this point of view, you have got IC engine along with mechanical coupler. So IC engine is connected to transmission. You have got generator as well, so that you can use IC engine to run generator and thereby produce electricity, right? And of course, electric motor, as you see here, has been connected to transmission. So all those options are available. However, the cost is high and the complexity is also a bit more as compared to series or parallel. So since it offers you features of both, that is series and parallel, both couplers you are using, so that's why it is called as series and parallel. And another one is complex, wherein the case is, instead of one power converter, now you will be using two power converters. One power converter in between your battery and electric motor, and another power converter in between your motor, generator, and battery, right? And now instead of power converter, the battery itself will work as an electric coupler, right? So though it is similar to series parallel, the important difference here is you are having two power converters you are using, and your battery will work as electric coupler, and of course mechanical coupler is also available here. So you see here that IC engine is also connected to transmission, electric motor is also connected to transmission. So I would say it is a further version of series and parallel type of configuration. So the decision that you will have to make is whether you are going to choose series or parallel, or series and parallel, or complex. That is the decision that one is required to make. Well, this is the schematic of typical series hybrid. You see here it is engine, then engine and generator assembly. You have got here motor along with its motor controller. In between you have got electric coupling device, and the term here is probably new for you, picking power source. So picking power source is a general term that has been used, right? Here onwards, we will time and again use this term, picking power source. Picking power source could be any storage device, energy storage device like battery or fuel cell or capacitor, right? Ultra capacitor or super capacitor. So picking power source, but most of the cases it will be battery, right? So you have got engine controller along with engine. You have got mechanical brake controller. You have got motor controller itself, right? So what I mean to say is there are variety of controllers that also you would be using along with series hybrid. But the important feature here is engine is directly not in contact with your road wheels, transmission, and all the tractive load will be taken up by your motor. So that is the important feature of your series configuration. Now, if you want to make a choice, of course, you need to understand the pros and cons of series and parallel technology. As far as series technology is concerned, series architecture is concerned, the most important advantage that you get is, since because engine is not directly connected to wheels, you are free to run your engine at any optimal speed that you like. For example, the engine map, if it tells you, let's say 2200 to 2800 rpm, this I'm just taking these figures for example. This is where your engine is going to give you optimal performance. Optimal performance means least fuel consumption, least emission, and higher values of power and torque. Then uh, this is possible in the case of series hybrid because engine is not directly taking up the load, right? So this is the biggest advantage that you are getting from series hybrid, right? And hence you can use high-speed engines as well in this case. Another important advantage that you get out of series is since your motor is taking the traction load, so you may not require to use multi-gear transmission, right? And if you can use maybe two motors, separate motors for left and right hand side wheel, so that differential can be dispensed with. Instead of two motors, maybe you can use four motors individual for each wheel, so you get the benefit of four in wheel motors. That is also possible, so that your off-road performance of your vehicle will be quite improved, a lot improved, especially from stability point of view. So that is a possibility. And since only motor is connected to road wheels, as has been shown here, so the control strategy would be simple to devise. So these are the advantages as far as series hybrid is concerned. However, it comes with some cons as well. And the important limitations are that there are two stages where the energy conversion is occurring. One is at generator, where this mechanical energy is converted to electrical energy. And then again in the traction motor, where electric energy is being converted to mechanical energy. So of course, more the number of stages of energy conversion, and less will be the efficiency, because the losses associated with every stage will compound and overall efficiency will be reduced. There is an issue of additional weight and cost of generator as well. And then one important issue with series hybrid is, since traction motor is taking all the tractive load, so the sizing, the whole sizing of your motor goes on a higher side. So you need to use a motor with higher rating, so as to take all the tractive load that will be taken by your vehicle. So this is something on negative side as far as series is concerned, series architecture is concerned. So you have got, so the beauty of hybrid drivetrain, hybrid vehicle is with only single powertrain. If you use, you have got limited options. But when you use hybrid powertrain, you have got a lot of flexibility. You have got a lot of flexibility in terms of operating modes. So you have now hybrid traction mode, which means the one which uses battery as well as engine generator power. You can rely on peak power source, that is maybe, let's say for sake of simplicity, battery alone traction mode. So you can use power which is there, has been stored in the battery. Engine generator mode, especially if your battery is not charged, then you can only shift on to engine generator alone traction mode. You have got another mode called PPS charging from the engine generator, and regenerative braking mode. So there is a lot of flexibility as far as operating modes are concerned. But however, along with flexibility comes complexity as well. And the vehicle needs an intelligence which mode is to be used in what circumstances. For example, when your vehicle is accelerating, probably you would like to use hybrid traction mode. When your vehicle is in the city limits, for example, noise-free regions, probably you would like your vehicle to use this peak power source alone traction mode, right? When your battery has got discharged, the vehicle should be using engine generator alone traction mode. So it depends upon the situation, the circumstances changes, and the operating modes also will change, right? So this intelligence, of course, is built in the vehicle through controller, right? And this is something, the controller is something that makes much of the distinction between electric vehicle and hybrid electric vehicle. Because in electric vehicle, you have got only one powertrain, but in a hybrid electric vehicle, multiple options are available. And that is why you need to use a good controller, so that, because your driver will not be able to make a decision. The driver will not be able to make a decision whether to run the vehicle in hybrid mode or PPS mode or engine generator mode. Ultimately, it's vehicle, the controller, which will have to make such a decision, right? So control is something that is a challenge as far as hybrid electric vehicle design is concerned. Coming to parallel electric hybrid drivetrain, just let me take a look at the watch. I think Professor Mane sir, whether we have got some time remaining, can we move forward?
Yeah, actually, we have overshooted the time, but around 5 minutes, because we have to take questions also. I would request.
So maybe that depends upon interest level of students as well. If they want me to continue.
Many questions are actually popping up.
Okay, fine.
I'm waiting for you to finish.
So maybe 10 more minutes I can think of.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So I think I will have to increase the speed a bit.
I'm getting messages from students to they're asking you to continue.
Okay, so they want me to continue.
Yes, please go ahead, and then later we will take question answers.
Okay, fine.
We had our Q&A session.
Fine. Okay. Just let me know when to stop, right?
No,
Otherwise,
we
it's
don't have
big.
any limits.
Okay, okay, fine.
Meeting does not have any limits. No issues.
Okay, fine. See, so now we come to parallel electric hybrid drivetrains. Now, as you see here, the engine and motor, as usual, they are here. But now you see a separate motor shaft to torque coupler and engine from engine through transmission. Again, one shaft is providing engine power to torque coupler, and from torque coupler, it will obviously go to wheels. So you are using torque coupler here, right? Of course, motor comes with motor controller. Then you are going to have battery as well. You are going to have engine controller along with your engine. At right there at the top of hierarchy, you have got vehicle controller, you have got mechanical brake controller. So all those controls, what we have seen, controllers, what we have seen in series, they are here. But the only difference here, the major important difference here is engine now is directly connected to your wheels. So engine is going to take road loads here, and that is where it is different as compared to series hybrid. Okay, fine. Now I will not go into this mathematical part because that in itself will take another session. But let me tell you that the torque, you have got two varieties here in case of parallel. It could be a torque coupler or speed coupler. Now, basically, they are mechanical couplers, and mechanical coupler could be anything like gear pair could be a torque coupler, or you may use chain and sprocket, could be your mechanical coupler, or belt and pulley system, that could be your coupler. Simply, if you use shaft without any reduction in speed, that could be your torque coupler, right? So all these are examples of torque couplers, right? And there is something called as speed coupling as well, speed couplers. That also I will show you on the next slides. So torque couplers are there. I will not go into, I will skip these slides, mathematical part of it, right? There are speed coupling devices like planetary gear unit or something called as transmotor. So if you use planetary gear unit or transmotor, it becomes a case of speed couplers, right? So you have got parallel drivetrain, but speed couplers with speed couplers, right? That is the distinction. Now again, there are variety of configurations that are available with parallel hybrid torque couplers. You see here, this is two shaft configuration. Two shaft because simply you can see there are two separate shafts: engine shaft, transmission one, and motor shaft. On the motor shaft, we have mounted transmission two. Now again, here you have got various possibilities. Possibility number one is both these transmissions are of single speed, right? Single speed gearboxes I am using. Another possibility is that engine, and this is the most likely possibility, engine will have multi-speed gearbox and motor will have single speed gearbox, which is most likely case. Case number three could be engine comes with single speed gearbox, motor could have multi-speed gearbox, but this is most impractical case, but it is there for to be considered. And case number four could be both of them are single speed. Engine is also using single speed, motor is also using single speed gearbox, right? So those variations have been shown here, right? So figure A, two multi-gear transmissions, right? Figure B, multi-gear engine transmission. So engine has got multi-gear transmission, but motor has got single gear transmission, the most likely case, right? C figure, it depicts the case scenario wherein single gear transmission and multi-gear motor transmission. And figure D represents both single gear transmissions. So all these combinations are possible, right? Sub cases are possible in this category called as two shaft configuration. So one of the important decision that you will have to make with regard to parallel hybrid is what kind of configuration you are going to choose for your application, right? Now going further ahead, you have something called a single shaft configuration. Now if you see here, engine and motor, they have got common shaft, right? So engine, motor, transmission, and then it goes to wheels. So that again is likely the case called a single shaft configuration. Only thing here is engine and motor speed should be same. They should be very similar, right? In the same region, then only it will be possible. And this is the case with most of mild hybrid drivetrains. But here again, there are two variations. You call it as pre-transmission. Now, pre-transmission means the motor comes before transmission. Motor comes before transmission. So that is why it is called as pre-transmission type of single shaft configuration. And another variety or variant that we have got is post transmission. Again, this is also single shaft parallel hybrid electric drivetrain, but post transmission. Post means after. So you have got motor which has been mounted, situated after transmission. So that's why you call it as post transmission. Again, here the problem here is, since motor is directly connected to your wheels, you cannot simply run the motor as a generator, and by running your engine generator you cannot charge the batteries. That is not possible. Why? Because your electric motor is rigidly connected to wheels, right? So see, variety of configurations are available. It depends upon your requirement. Every configuration has got its pros and cons. So you need to understand them. You need to identify your requirement, and then suitable, appropriate configuration you are supposed to select. Another variety as far as configuration is got is, now this is typical case of retrofitted vehicle, right? So already I have a vehicle which is a conventional vehicle. So this is a rear wheel driven vehicle with engine and transmission. But now I want to convert this conventional vehicle into say a hybrid vehicle. So what I do is I take a set of motor along with motor controller, batteries and transmission. And that is something, through this motor, I'm going to provide drive to front wheels. Of course, it will require a lot of thinking from design point of view, but this is possible. But the issue here is the complexity will increase, because synchronization is very important, right? The speed synchronization between motor and engine. Then space also will be very limited, because all these powertrains, these two powertrains will occupy a lot of space. So packaging becomes an issue here, right? But at the other side, you will get a benefit of four-wheel drive vehicle, because both axles are now drive axles. So your stability of your vehicle will be good. As far as speed coupling is concerned, the major benefit that you will get with speed coupling is you can detach the speed of two power plants from vehicle speed. So there is not necessary now, there is not no correlation between the speed of your power plants, that is engine or motor, and the vehicle speed. In other words, you are free to run your engine and motor in the speed range wherein you are going to get optimal speed. So if this is the case, if this is what you want, then you are supposed to go for speed coupling. Now again, speed coupling, as we have said, you can use, it is possible with planetary gear unit. So this configuration shows you the one which uses planetary gear unit, right? Parallel hybrid drivetrain with speed coupling using planetary gear train, right? Another one is showing you the use of electric transmotor. See, rest of the items are same, battery with battery controller, engine, then motor, right? But now you are using electric transmotor, so it becomes speed coupling. So variety of modes that are possible are, again, those I have listed here, like motor alone, propelling mode, hybrid traction mode, PPS charge mode, engine alone, propelling mode, and so on, right? So just like in case of series hybrid, you are getting a lot of flexibility here as well. Well, there are few slides are there, but now I think I will have to run ahead, because uh, I have inserted this slide so that you just get a feel of what is controller and remaining issues. So we are talking about control scheme. Or this diagram shows you overall control scheme that you use for parallel torque coupled hybrid drivetrain, right? So very important aspect of design of your, or challenge of hybrid vehicle design, is vehicle controller, because it needs to decide which would be the most appropriate operational mode for a drivetrain. Well, fine. I think I will move ahead, right? This is a typical control flow chart that you can have. This is just an example. Now we don't have time. It will take another session. But likewise, you are required to write some control flow chart or algorithms. And then these algorithms will be programmed, and this program will be stored in the memory of your controller. And the controller will work like a brain of your drivetrain, right? So it will get signals from variety of sensors, right? Then it will follow this program, and accordingly it will actuate, it will decide whether engine alone traction mode is to go for, or hybrid traction mode is something that has to be opted for, or maybe if no traction, if braking, then again the two choices available are whether regenerative braking alone will meet the braking requirement, or you need to use hybrid braking. Hybrid braking means regenerative braking plus mechanical braking or usual service brake, mechanical brakes, right? So this combination is to be used, right? So this choice has to be made by your controller. You cannot rely on the driver. Well, this is another example of control strategy. This control strategy is very simple one. So what the logic here is, you operate the engine generator and charge the PPS till you reach to the maximum value, the charging limit of your PPS or battery, say for example 90%. Then automatically the engine generator will be stopped, switched off, and then you will be using the energy that has been stored in the PPS. So you are consuming this energy. When you reach at the bottom limit, say for example 20%, then automatically again the engine generator will be switched on and this cycle will go on, right? So this is something very, I would say, primitive or simple logic that you can have. So it's like similar to our thermostat that operates at certain temperature, and that's why it is called as engine on-off control strategy. Well, there are some analytical equations that are available with the help of which you can estimate in both cases, series as well as parallel. You can estimate how much power your engine is required to deliver, right? So you have two cases to be considered: normal highway driving at constant speed and driving in stop and go pattern. Because highway driving and urban driving, these are totally different cases. You need to ensure that your engine delivers power, appropriate amount of power for so as to satisfy both cases. I will not go into the arithmetic equations, analytical equations. We don't have much time remaining. Similarly, there are analytical equations for electric motor power, like this one, right? So by using such analytical equations, you can estimate the power rating for your hybrid vehicle. Another case is battery, that is PPS. So how much power, how much energy you want to have in your PPS battery, that also you want to estimate. So some analytical approach is available, right? So at RIT, we are having separate course. We are running separate course on electric and hybrid electric vehicle design and technology, right? So I usually go to the deeper levels as far as these design issues are concerned. But important thing to be noticed here in case of electric and hybrid electric vehicle is that the interdisciplinary nature. So you need to have background of vehicle dynamics, energy storage and vehicle design, right? You will need someone from power electronics and electric machine background, like people from electrical engineering and electronics engineering, right? You need to have someone good in control aspect of it, right? Control engineering is course, the important course from that point of view, right? So this is how, so this is a challenge. As I said, Government of India is very much focused on implementation of hybrid and electric vehicles. So we have got at least two policies like NEMMP, that is National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, and FAME. Another one is FAME, that is Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Electric Vehicles. So with the help of these policy initiatives, Government of India is trying to push electric and hybrid electric mobility on Indian roads. This one slide gives some talks about research challenges for electric and hybrid electric vehicles. So though the future belongs to electric mobility, still these are the challenges that we need to work on, like range improvement strategies, battery thermal management is an aspect, regenerative braking, because very small amount of braking energy could be captured back. So we want to improve upon that. Lightweighting, as already we have talked about, electric machines and control strategies. So these are the aspects, these are the challenges. A lot of research is already going on. Right? These are some initiatives at RIT campus. Our students have developed the prototypes of something called as Segway V0. This is the 0th version of Segway that we have developed last year. And this is your own EV cycle, which has been converted into something called as e-assist velomobile. So this is something our students have, students' contribution to electric mobility. So finally, I will summarize the design challenges for electric and hybrid electric vehicles on this slide. Selection of configuration, selection of electric drive, transmission decisions, then selection of battery, lightweighting, safety, and braking, suspension of tires. These are the design challenges as far as electric vehicles is concerned. As far as hybrid electric vehicle is concerned, selection of architecture is a big challenge. Then whether you need to take a call on whether you want to have torque coupling or speed coupling, which kind of configuration you are going to select, that decision remains to be made, and control strategy. So what control strategy you are going to use, right? So these are the design challenges for typical hybrid electric vehicle. So I think I have finished now. These are the references that I would just like to share with you. Very good book that I'm using, Meherdad Ehsani's book from CRC Press. Right, this we are using as a textbook. And two other equally good books are Larmaini and Laurie's Electric Vehicle Technology from Wiley and Sons, and Iqbal Hussain. So these gentlemen are from Texas University, USA, and Iqbal Hussain also comes from this. And the beauty is that both these four people belong to different departments. Someone is from mechanical, another one is from computer science, another one is from electrical, right? So that's why I said that it is basically an interdisciplinary nature of these fields. Of course, there are more than these number of references that are available, right? With this note, I think I should conclude because time is running away. So thank you very much for patient listening. And I think it's time to take up questions if any. Thank you.